Hello everyone, Céad Míle Fáilte und herzlich willkommen. You're all very welcome to this morning's event, Investing in a Green Future, Ireland's Transition to a Green Economy, organised by the European Parliament Liaison Office and the German Embassy here in Ireland and European Movement Ireland. My name is Ella Mc Sweeney and I'm delighted to be your moderator here this morning. I think it's fair to say this is a very timely event, coming as it does as we enter the last month of Germany's presidency of the European Union. We're going to have a discussion of Germany and Ireland's priorities with regard to climate action and how these will be inextricably linked to the economic recovery in the months and years ahead. Happily, there have been decades of stable bilateral relations between Ireland and Germany. We know the historic close links between our countries, which continue today. Some 300 German companies have a base here in Ireland. Germany is Ireland's fourth biggest trading partner. They love our butter. Germans are the third largest tourist group here in Ireland. And meanwhile, in Germany, many thousands of Irish people have made it their home, including in the past myself. And the backdrop to this discussion is, of course, profoundly challenging: the pandemic, Brexit, and the existential threat of climate breakdown and the biodiversity crisis. The pandemic, of course, has posed a massive threat to our health and also our economy. And hopefully now, with the vaccine, we're coming out of at the other end of that tunnel. And with that comes a massive opportunity to reshape the economic recovery while addressing these crises, along with guaranteeing a just transition for all. And the background to this event, of course, is the European Green Deal as the new EU growth strategy and a way to achieve climate neutrality by 2050, while ensuring a prosperous and resilient economy ahead for all European citizens. So I hope this morning's discussion is going to take a positive tone about the profound opportunities for Ireland to transition to a green economy and benefit from the investment and job opportunities it can bring both to Ireland, to Germany, and Europe as a whole. So I'm delighted to be here to introduce our panel. We're going to have a Q&A session after the panelists talk. So I'd encourage any of you out there watching, please submit your questions and comments here online, or use #GreenFuture on social media to do the same, and so to the panel. We have 5 wonderful panelists. Her Excellency Ambassador Deike Potzel, the Ambassador of Germany to Ireland, is very welcome. She's spoken of a new dynamism in Irish-German relations as our countries work and have worked close together as a result of Brexit, and hopefully this dynamism will be enhanced in the context of the climate challenges and opportunities ahead. We also have Grace O'Sullivan, Green Party MEP for Ireland South, with a background in climate action and also business development. And also, I was delighted to read, Ireland's first female surf champion. Richard Bruton is Fine Gael TD for Dublin Bay North. He was previously a Minister for Climate Action and Environment, who published the government's first climate action plan. Michael Schrodi is a member of the Bundestag, the German parliament, for the Social Democratic Party, and he's deputy chair of the German-Irish Parliamentary Friendship Group. And he was also previously a secondary school teacher. And then finally, we're delighted to be joined by John Fitzgerald, chair of the Irish Government's Climate Change Advisory Council, honorary fellow of Trinity College Dublin, and a former research professor at the Economic and Social Research Institute. So you're all extremely welcome. And I'm going to hand over first to Ambassador Potzel.
Thank you so very much. Can you hear and see me all right? Yeah? Okay, lovely. Thank you so much for the warm words of welcome, Ella. Thanks for hosting us. Dear participants, distinguished panelists, Richard Bruton TD, MEP Grace O'Sullivan, Member of Parliament Michael Schrodi, and of course Professor John Fitzgerald, thank you so much for being with us today, for taking the time for this very important discussion, I feel. I'm delighted to open it because I feel that this is a very relevant topic, climate protection. It is clearly a pivotal challenge of our times. I would first of all like to thank Kieran Murray and the colleagues from European Movement Ireland very much, and also Natalie De Hertog from the European Parliament Liaison Office in Ireland for the idea and for the excellent, once again, I have to say, excellent preparation and professional organization of this online event. It's always a pleasure to work with you. Climate action, ladies and gentlemen, has been one of the priorities of the German presidency of the European Council this year. Our goal has been is still to overcome the economic and social consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic sustainably and inclusively, and thereby help shape the transition to a sustainable economy. We strive for an ambitious climate, environmental and biodiversity policy, a focus also on the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and Sustainable Agriculture. The German EU presidency is working to ensure that the EU and its member states continue to fulfill their role in the international arena as ambitious and active players in the area of climate diplomacy and sustainability. Now, the European Council's agreement in July on the next multi-annual financial framework and the recovery program Next Generation EU was indeed a historical one, we feel, not only in focusing on the joint effort to overcome the current crisis of the pandemic, but we have also agreed on modernization of the EU budget. 30% of EU spending are supposed to contribute to funding the fight against climate change. Recovery measures to mitigate the corona crisis are also, we feel, a chance for investment in sustainability, what we call the green recovery. And we know that we have still not agreed on the multi-annual financial framework nor on the Next Generation EU budget, but hopefully we will get it done in the next couple of weeks. With its European Green Deal, the European Commission has presented an ambitious cross-sector proposal that is being implemented step by step. This includes finalizing the European climate law and to agree on new EU nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement in order to reduce our CO2 emissions and to reach carbon net neutrality by 2050. Another important element is pushing for a European concept for the implementation of the 2030 SDGs in the EU. So in order to achieve the EU's goals in the area of renewable energies, we also aim for a Council conclusion on the European framework conditions for joint renewable energy projects by the member states, particularly in the area of offshore wind power. At the recent video conference of EU ministers responsible for the internal market and industry, our Federal Minister for Economics, Altmaier, said, a resilient, and I quote, a resilient EU industrial sector with the ability to compete is the backbone for economic recovery from the coronavirus pandemic. This is why, in addition to instant crisis relief, we must now also create the right framework to allow us to make the transition to a green and digital economy. We also need more investment in forward-looking technologies. So just allow me to briefly give you a few figures about the state of affairs in Germany, where we strongly support and promote renewable energies and an increase in energy efficiency. The German government has pledged to achieve climate neutrality by 2050, and today renewable energies make up for 50% of electricity power consumption in Germany. Renewable energies are used to heat 2/3 of homes built in 2019. Between 2004 and 2018, Germany has quadrupled the share of renewable energies in power consumption, whereas EU-wide it has doubled. Our target are 65% consumption from renewable energies by 2030. We had targeted a 35% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2020 in comparison to 1990, and we have surpassed that goal in 2019 already. And we are also working towards increasing capacity of offshore wind energy. And in August 2020, a law was passed to organize coal phase out by 2038 at the latest. So that doesn't mean that everything has been achieved already. Obviously, a lot remains to be done, no doubt. We are working on it. And I think there's also a lot of potential for cooperation in this between EU member states. As I mentioned, there are plans for that, but also bilaterally, obviously, between Germany and Ireland. Ladies and gentlemen, it remains important to bring people and societies on board in that endeavor as well. And therefore, exchanges like ours today are, to me, paramount. So thanks for joining in. And I'm very much looking forward to an interesting discussion. And I already want to invite you to reach out to us, the embassy, or to the Chamber of Commerce, the German-Irish Chamber of Commerce here in Dublin, who will also be extremely helpful and supportive if you want to do business with us, especially in the areas we are talking about today. Thank you so much for having me.
Ambassador Potzel, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm going to move now to Grace O'Sullivan, Green Party MEP for Ireland South.
Morning, everyone, and thank you, Ambassador. And yes, let's get down to business. Green investment economy, a combination of words that are becoming a normal part of conversation. They are no longer a contradiction in terms. Good green investment makes sense on so many levels. It makes good economic sense. So what should Ireland's transition towards a green economy be from a green perspective? Fundamentally, it's crucial that all legislative proposals presented by the European Commission and negotiated by the European Parliament and Council, they must fall in line with the overarching European Green Deal, as well as the Commission's Farm to Fork policy and the biodiversity strategy. If not, we will fail. Over the last few months, the EU's climate law has been a top priority. While at home, it was certainly positive news to see our own climate bill presented in parallel. Our Green Group's position in the European Parliament was 65% greenhouse gas emission reduction by 2030. The European Parliament settled on a compromise of 60%. But 55% is likely at council level. So you see where I'm going with this. Compromise is one thing, but not at the expense of our future. I commend the German presidency for your work so far and would encourage ministers to be brave and strive for ambition. I certainly will do that with my votes. I take responsibility very seriously as an elected representative. I'm the leading voice on fisheries and marine policy within my Green Group in the European Parliament, which it actually complements my national position as Green Party spokesperson on the marine. I've also co-chair the Biodiversity Working Group, and I'm delighted to have been designated as European Parliament's lead negotiator of the EU new Environment Action Programme, legislation where I will be working to incorporate steps towards a just transition and other improvements in line with the Sustainable Development Goals and the well-being indicators. We must lead with ambition and follow the science. Just last week, Ireland's Environmental Protection Agency released its State of the Environment report. And our main takeaway was that the overall quality of Ireland's environment is not what it should be. They also argued that the post-COVID recovery plans must be made through a green investment lens. I fully agree and would say that any long-term economic plan needs to be made through a green investment lens with climate action and biodiversity protection at the heart of it. Investors must change their mindset and understand that fair and indeed substantial profits can be earned, but within the context of a just and fair transition that incorporates genuine green industrial strategies, a circular economy strategy, and all under the oath of a do no harm principle that avoids greenwashing. Green thinking is moving front and center internationally. The European Commission is investing in climate action and environmental sustainability. The European Investment Bank has dedicated 50% of its finances to climate and environment action to 2025. The European Commission laid out plans earlier this month for a massive scale-up of offshore wind farms as part of the EU efforts to phase out fossil fuels and combat global warming. Of course, development in these areas must not come at the expense of marine ecosystems and biodiversity, but well-planned renewables are the future and present massive investment opportunities. China, Japan, South Korea, and many other countries are setting deadlines to decarbonize. This gives financial markets and investors the certainty to see that investing in green, clean, renewable markets and systems is the way forward. We are making progress despite the enormous challenges we face. I will say it again and again. The future is green. Thank you.
Grace O'Sullivan, thank you so much for that. We're going to go straight after Grace now to Richard Bruton, Fine Gael TD for Dublin Bay North. Now we might just, sorry Richard, we're going to ask you to start again.
Maybe sorry, I think I didn't unmute myself. No, thanks very much for the opportunity. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, indeed, perfectly.
Yeah, no, I wanted to deal with three things. One was the unique nature of this challenge that makes it particularly difficult. Second is, I suppose, the particularly strategic role that the European Union must play in this transition. And the last thing is what I think are the 5 key ingredients if we're to succeed. I suppose what makes this particularly difficult problem is that normally transformative change is driven by, I suppose, disruptive technologies that break up the existing practice. Here we have a situation where its scientific insight is now going to require us to make transformative change where a lot of the technologies aren't fully developed. And I think that creates a more difficult problem. The other problem is, I suppose, what they call the rider problem, that you can't exclude from the benefits of changes that we make people who refuse to participate. And clearly at international level, that creates a real problem if some countries decide to opt out, but even at local level with sectors having to be I suppose, watched to ensure that they participate. A third thing is that confronting people with the true cost of their behavior, which is what a lot of the challenge is, can provoke populist reactions from both the left and the right. And we've seen that particularly in France with the Maillot jaune, but it is a feature in other politics, including our own. And the final thing that makes this difficult is, it's largely rich countries who have created this, but it is both the rich and the poor who must respond to the change if we're to be successful. And that obviously poses particular challenges. I believe Europe is in a particularly strong position to respond to this challenge because of it has the most sophisticated system for, I suppose, international multilateral cooperation that we have ever seen. And I think that clearly means that the European Union has to take its responsibilities more seriously than other, and it has that capacity. And in my view, it also needs it, because we need to develop for the European Union a sense of mission that can engage its citizens. And I think that's exactly what the EU Green Deal is seeking to do, and it's something that I very strongly support. The final thing I just want to address is what I think are the key to success. I think the first thing you need is a vision. And a lot of the conversation, in my view, has been about burning platforms, that we're in deep trouble and we need to do something about it, or about politicians sort of competing with one another for higher ambition without having a clear path that can show people the way forward. What I believe we need is a vision which people see themselves and their successors in a stronger environment, more resilient farms, more resilient enterprises, more resilient homes. And that is a different challenge, and one that I don't think has been engaged sufficiently so far. And we need to see concrete outcomes that will be measured to show that this is delivering for citizens. The second thing I think is crucial is authority to make change. And one of the dimensions of that is legitimacy. And I think in Ireland we have, through the Citizens' Assembly, followed by the All-Party Oireachtas Committee, created a good foundation for the Climate Action Plan and the climate bill that we're now discussing. But that legitimacy has to be continually created. And I think we will need to have better mechanisms for just transition. And we also have to have better mechanisms or what might be called community gain, because communities are going to have to accept massive changes in infrastructure, and they will want to see some gain, or else you can risk this getting caught up in a planning process. The second dimension of authority, I suppose, is the capacity to break down barriers. And that too requires quite a bit of thought to ensure we give the power to make the changes that are necessary. I think the third thing I think is really important is leadership in every sector. We've undervalued, in my view, leadership in Ireland, but leadership that recognises the needed change in every sector and starts to build that momentum is crucial here. So we need to have people who have honest conversations within the sector about what is unsustainable and what needs to change. We need to get people on side, out of the stands and onto the pitch to drive the change. We need to confront rackets that are, that will seek people to try and avoid the necessary change. So leadership is really important. We have to invest in that in each and every sector. Of course, we have to have resources, and a lot of this will require upfront investment. But another dimension of this is that a lot of our budget making in Ireland, and I suspect in most of Europe, is based on, if you like, no policy change with small changes at the margin. We won't deliver the sort of major change we need if that's the way we continue to build our budgets. So this requires big change. It also requires big change in the way the financial institutions appraise risk around stranded assets and the risk that. And the last thing I'd say is perseverance. One of the things that we built in any of our successful programs that have worked is that we've created a momentum from the centre, an implementation board rooted in the Prime Minister's office, the Taoiseach's office, that can force the silos to cooperate and can continually monitor, take feedback and adapt. I think that institutional element is crucial if we're to succeed.
Thank you very much, Richard Bruton. And we're going to go now to Germany, to Michael Schrodi, a member of the Bundestag, the German Parliament, for the Social Democratic Party. And I'd also like to welcome his interpreter, Martin Boyster, who will be with us for the next hour as well.
Thank you very much, and hello to Ireland here from Germany, and thank you very much for the invitation to speak at this event today of the Bundestag, where the transition to a climate economy and society is critical. This is not a burden, an opportunity for Europe and its member states. Change. It's a vision to new jobs for building a stronger economy and a just society. In Germany, our new climate protection law and the climate based on it are particularly important. Prescribes a path towards climate neutrality where no ministry can escape. The decision to phase out power from coal 2038 at the latest, huge milestone, especially as this coincides with the phasing out of nuclear energy. In addition, we are a highly industrialized country that depends on a reliable energy supply. We will therefore accelerate and promote the expansion of energies in order to achieve our goal of at least 65 renewables by 2030, especially through wind and power. The current corona crisis poses an unprecedented challenge for all of us as society, and has had a dramatic impact on our economy, threatening people's and livelihoods. In West End, expensive recovery programs have helped to support.
Herr Schrodi, I'm going to ask you, I'm sorry, the line is a little bit difficult. I don't know if anyone else is experiencing that, but I want to ensure that we hear what you have to say. So what I'm going to ask, Herr Schrodi, is if it's possible for you to log out and log in, and we will see if we can get a better line.
Okay, I will try that.
I am sorry to ask this of you, but I think it's important that we hear what you have to say. And while you do that, I will move on to John Fitzgerald, and we will then be able to start again with you with a better line.
Okay.
Thank you very much. So I will go immediately now to John Fitzgerald, Chair of the Irish Government's Climate Change Advisory Council. John.
Right, thank you very much, Ella, and I hope my line is okay. 20 years ago, Europe said that it was going to take action on climate change by market measures, in particular the emissions trading scheme, whereas the US said they were going to invest in research. They didn't want to do anything which was difficult and too obvious a way for people. Now, I leave the US to one side, but now in Europe, the latest proposals from the EU include both market mechanisms and a major investment programme, and I think this is the way to go. In Ireland, we did very little, with the exception of renewable electricity, which has been very successful in Ireland and rolled out at no cost to consumers. But we did very little until last year. The Climate Action Plan, I think, is a serious attempt to deal with climate change in Ireland. I welcome the EU proposals, in particular the increased ambition and the combination of measures which are being proposed, both in terms of market mechanisms and in terms of investment, I think can deliver real change in Europe. One area of proposals they propose to include pretty well all of carbon dioxide in the emissions trading scheme. I think this is the way to go. I am nervous as to whether it will get through in terms of it being enshrined in legislation. Also, they need to set a target for methane, a long-lived gas. There's a paper on this by the EU Commission, but it doesn't come down with absolutely firm proposals in this regard. If this legislation is put in place, it will require us in Ireland to somewhat modify our proposals, and it will require significant changes in Germany in its proposals. In particular, the domestic trading scheme may well be replaced by an EU-wide scheme, which I think would be better for us all. In terms of investment, the major investment programme, I think, would be very important. What one of the earlier speakers talked about how the rest of the world has to change. It is not just Ireland, it's not just Germany, it's not just the EU. And our contribution to that, the most important contribution, will be investing in developed new technologies. And it's when these new technologies are the cheap solution, they will be adopted in India and in Africa. And we already see that in terms of Germany spent a lot of money developing solar. Possibly could have been done cheaper, but German consumers are paying for it. But the benefits of that are being seen by solar replacing coal, for example, in India as being a cheap solution. So this investment program is important for Europe, it's important for Ireland and Germany, and it's important for the rest of the world in pushing the development of the technologies which will allow the whole world to have a reasonable standard of living and tackle the problem of climate change. Also, in terms of finance, one of the areas the EU Commission proposals indicate that not just in Ireland, and I thought that it was just in Ireland, but across the EU, households are going to have to invest a lot of money in upgrading their dwellings in order to go carbon neutral. This is going to be a huge investment program which governments across Europe will not be able to finance. So putting in place the finance for this will be important. And there was a conference held by the EIB in Ireland this time last year, which discussed this issue. So there is funding available, but getting that funding from the EIB to households so that households make the change is going to be a challenge, not just at a European level, but at an individual country level. Finally, in terms of the EU proposals, there are regulatory changes which are very important. For example, the regulation of motor vehicles. The Department of Finance here has assessed that it will cost the government a very large sum of money at current rates of subsidy to see the adequate rollout of electric vehicles. However, there's a very interesting paper which shows that the Obama restrictions on motor vehicles actually produced a very big reduction in US vehicle emissions at very low cost, so that the regulation which is coming into force this year will help us all to drive transport in a more sustainable fashion. So I welcome the proposals. I think they're very important. I think it's important they're legislated, they enter into legislation, and we will all have to adjust to that. But I think it does give a real prospect of tackling climate change at a European level. Thank you.
Professor Fitzgerald, thank you very much. And we will now go to Michael Schrodi in Germany. I hope you have a better line.
Hello, I hope it will work. It's okay?
There is a little bit of an echo going. If there is anyone in your office, you went live, turn it off.
No.
Well, let's keep going and see how far it gets. I'll interrupt you if we can't hear you.
We will try it.
Thank
so,
you.
Alan again, from Germany, and thank you very much for the invitation to speak at this event today of the Bundestag. I already transition to a climate neutral economy and society is critical. This is not burden, but an for Europe and its member states. Chance, or like Mr. Bruton, vision to create jobs, for building a stronger economy and a society. In Germany, or a new climate law, climate program based are of the importance, prescribes a clear path neutrality where nobody can escape. The decision to power generated from coal by 2038 at the latest is a milestone, especially as sides with the phasing out of nuclear energy. In addition, we are a highly industrialized country that depends on a reliable AI. We will accelerate the expansion of renewable energies in order to a goal of at least 5 renewable by 2030, especially through wind and solar power. The current crisis poses an unprecedented challenge all of us as a society, and has had a dramatic effect on our economy, people's jobs and livelihoods. Investments and economic programs have helped to support economy. However, we ensure that we invest in specific areas to help promote an economic formation to a job growth. One good example for this transformation is the automotive industry in Germany. The future of there lies in environmentally friendly mobility solutions, and we support this industry. The required changes. We are investing in Germany 8 billion euro sustainable mobility and valuation through our economic stimulus program. We're using varied features for that: tax incentives, higher bonuses for us, the accelerate expansion of charging network, and we are also making research and development from mobility cell production. That transition to mobility based on automobiles will not turn the mobility sector cruel if the electricity required is still dependent on coal-fired power stations. Is why we need the expansion of renewable energies, and these major challenges call for major financial measures, I think. So the Federation of German Trade Unions to the Federation of German Industry have calculated that Germany alone will have to raise 450 billion euros 10 years to invest in the future. 5 billion this allows for decarbonization. Such forward-looking can indeed must also be financed. This is not only socially just, but also economic sense. Investments of today, they help us build environment we live in tomorrow and help deliver in income. The same is true, I think, for Europe. The corona pandemic, as well as the challenges of a changing international, have shown us that we need and unite Europe. With the coming American President Biden, can at least hope for a more reliable administration. His and after all have Irish roots. Trump's on the other hand originated from Bavaria. I'm sorry about that. So can we do Europe and its member state. The motto of the presidency is making strong again. Similarly, in West, climate-friendly economy can be the motto for employment and prosperity. It has proposed towards EU economy Green Deal in order to ensure that the terms of the economy is spent equitable. The Just Fund will particularly support those and that are most affected by transformation. At the same time, we have increased the funds designated for this area in the multi-annual financial framework and in the recovery plan next generation EU. And part of this is enable and include economic growth that will contribute to the creation and protection of jobs. Includes for climate-friendly and affordable mobility, the fast expansion of offshore wind power. We also need the right framework conditions for renewable project progress in the field hydrogen technology. Europe and its member states are facing huge challenges, even more so because of the impact of Brexit. For Germany, Ireland is an important partner in Europe, and we would like to intensify our collaboration. Glad to say that I'm involved in this and had the pleasure to visit Ireland last part of Bundestag special delegation. I would like to thank you very much for the fantastic hospitality and I Irish friend here Mila Macaulay to say go Mila Mach go Lear. I hope you understand that. Thank you very much.
Herr Schrodi, thank you very much indeed for that. I'm very mindful that there was still a little bit of feedback, but I think it's important that we let you speak. If it is possible, perhaps we can make available that speech to people who would like it in some form or another. But I want to just recap in terms of the main points that you made. The importance of a transition to a climate neutral economy and society. You spoke about the Klimaschutzgesetz, the climate protection law in Germany as being of particular importance. The law prescribes a clear path towards climate neutrality. You spoke about the future of the automotive industry, a vital, obviously, industry in Germany, the importance that its future is in environmentally friendly mobility solutions, and the importance of Germany supporting that and Europe supporting that. And you also spoke about the need for huge expansion of renewable energies.
Excuse me, does everybody hear Ella? I don't hear her. You hear her?
Yes, I can.
That's very strange. I'm sorry. Okay.
Can you hear me now, Ambassador? No. I'm perhaps Ryan, the technical person, can fix that and see if we can make sure that all the microphones are working. But I will just continue, if that is okay, Ambassador, just to sum up briefly what Herr Schrodi spoke about. He then spoke about the importance of major financial measures and spoke about the calculation that Germany will have to raise 450 billion euros over the next 10 years to invest in this future with regard to renewable energies, and that the importance of this being financed by loans. Finally, the importance of a strong and united Europe in achieving these aims. I think that's basically a summation there of his speech. I don't know whether he can hear us now, but I might, Deputy Bruton, go to you first while we sort out some of the technology issues. And just ask you a little bit, I mean, we heard about the Klimaschutzgesetz, this climate protection law in Germany, and the importance of the sort of legislative basis to all of this and the legal requirements to underpin these ambitions.
Yeah, I think everyone recognizes that because of the nature of this change requiring every sector, every part of our community to transform itself, it needs a legislative framework that embraces all of those sectors and all of those dimensions. So a climate legislation that not just sets a target, sets out 5-year carbon budgets allocates those carbon budgets to different sectors and then holds those sectors to account. If they're falling short, requires them to take corrective action. I think that framework is absolutely essential, and we are at the moment seeking to improve the framework that was recently published by the Minister and tighten up some of the language so it's clearer that this framework can deliver. But I think that will be in legislative place during the course of this year and will be an important milestone. But I would emphasize that it's only the start of the problem. It's implementation in key sectors that delivers. So that's where the heavy lifting will have to be done in the different sectors that have to respond.
Grace O'Sullivan MEP, you also spoke of the importance of the law. It's an obvious thing to say, but obviously without it, we will fail, won't we?
Yeah. The climate law is really important, and coming from a EU level, it is crucial because it will give the support and confidence of other member states to get on with their own legislation. And we in the Parliament managed to push in that the sectors would, so there'd be sectorial road maps, so that each sector we could see what progress was being made, but that they would themselves come up with the roadmap. So they hopefully would get buy-in from that level, and that's also, that is a reaction to what Richard said, that we would do that in Ireland. So in Ireland, particularly, where agriculture is really important, it's crucial that the sector works with the government to set out the roadmap and to ensure the buy-in. But the targets will be binding, so there'll have to be a real ambition to make this happen. Because the other side, and we have to keep reminding ourselves, why are we doing this? We're doing this because we have global warming, we have a climate emergency, and we see all of the evidence, the science is telling us that the biodiversity is in decline. And no one in any sector wants to see that happening. So the climate law will be crucial, but it's whether we get that, we get the reduction percentage, whereas, the science is saying we need 65%. In the European Parliament, we fought and got 60%. And now we are putting pressure on the European Council ministers, and as I am to my own colleague Eamon Ryan, that we in Ireland at least go for a 60%. So it is a struggle. We recognise without a doubt that it will be difficult for sectors, for businesses to come on board. But that's why we absolutely need the support of all these programs coming from the European Commission, the various strategies, the very funding mechanisms, the European Investment Bank, to underpin and support the sectors to make the transition.
Ambassador Potzel, can I ask you please to talk a little bit about the importance of the UN Sustainable Development Goals and the alignment of what Europe and the countries within Europe want to do with this alongside these very important UN Sustainable Goals?
Well, as I said in my opening remarks, I think they need to be in the center of our attention, and we've been working on it for a long time. But I think what is absolutely crucial is to be even better at this joint effort as a European Union, but obviously also internationally further afield, to bring everybody in that discussion. And I mean, this topic is also very close to Ireland. David Donoghue is such an important ambassador in that regard still. I mean, he was at the time in New York, but he's still dealing with these issues, and also, by the way, collaborating with Germany in that respect, going over there sometimes for months to work with one of our foundations. So I think there is still a lot to do, but I'm very happy that we also made it like part of our priorities in the EU presidency program.
And can I ask as well, Ambassador, what lessons can Ireland learn from Germany in terms of making sure that the very big, successful, economically weighty industries, for example, in Germany, the car industry, that they're brought alongside? Because we have our own very successful industries here, but obviously change is difficult for everyone. So what lessons, if any, can Ireland learn from the way in which Germany has found a way to bring those industries on board?
Maybe that is also a nice question for Mr. Schrodi to answer, to give his insight. He might even know more about it. I think, first of all, it's important to say that we are, I think, not in the place where we would want to be overall. So there is still a lot we can do. Awareness is key. So as I said, people have to buy into it, and people does not only mean, average citizens, but especially, of course, also the business people you were talking about. So we need to raise awareness, and I think that started pretty early in Germany. Now, we haven't achieved everything that we wanted to achieve, but this kind of awareness, I think, in Germany starting so early helped us to push certain agendas. I think one of the reasons why the Greens started being a more influential factor in Germany earlier than in many other European countries. So you need that, I think, push also from society to then also, get big business moving, I suppose.
So, Michael Schrodi, can I ask you that question? I mean, in your opening remarks, and in case people didn't hear it, you said the law prescribes a clear path towards climate neutrality where no ministry can escape. So there's no exceptionalism here, presumably in Germany, but I wonder what, if anything, various industries in Ireland, but also the Irish government can learn from the way in which you have managed or not to bring all the industries along with you in Germany.
Ja, vielen Dank. Ich hoffe, Sie hören mich jetzt besser. I hope you hear me better now. Okay. So, ich habe einiges dazu schon in meinem Eingangsstatement gesagt, aber ich muss natürlich jetzt einiges wiederholen, weil Sie mich nicht so gut gehört haben. Ich hoffe, dass ich das relativ knapp hinbekomme. Erstens mal, ich glaube, es ist kein Widerspruch, diesen Klimaschutz und den Klimawandel und diese Transformation gemeinsam mit einer starken Wirtschaft hinzubekommen. Es ist eine Chance für Europa. Was haben wir da in Deutschland gemacht? Einerseits haben wir sehr schnell schon mit Beginn der rot-grünen Bundesregierung in den Anfang der 2000er Jahre uns auf den Weg gemacht, erneuerbare Energien zu großen Programmen auf den Weg zu bringen. Hat auch viel Geld gekostet, das auf den Weg zu bringen. Aber wir sind da eben, wie Frau Potzel sagte, auch schon weit und können eben schon einen hohen Anteil erneuerbarer Energien auch jetzt vorweisen, die wir brauchen, um die Wirtschaft auch klimaneutral zu machen. Also braucht es, und ich glaube, dazu brauchen wir Europa und eine starke Europäische Union, brauchen wir europäische Programme, die diese Transformation, die wir überall haben, eben auch in Irland, auch in anderen Staaten, auf den Weg zu bringen. Wir brauchen dort große und massive Investitionen, damit wir, wenn man jetzt die Automobilindustrie als Beispiel nimmt in Deutschland, diese Automobilindustrie auch hin zu einer klimaneutralen Industrie zu machen, indem wir zum Beispiel Steuervergünstigungen für Elektromobilität, Bonus für Elektroautos, aber auch eben Investitionen haben in Ladestationen. Wir haben keine Ladeinfrastruktur, aber auch, das ist mir ganz wichtig, Forschung und Entwicklung in eben Wasserstoff, in Elektromobilität. Also es ist ein breites Feld und das machen wir in Deutschland jetzt mit dem Klimaschutzprogramm und auch mit dem Konjunkturprogramm, aber das brauchen wir überall in Europa und da brauchen wir viel Geld dafür, viele Investitionen.
So I've made some of these points in my opening statement, but if you would allow me, I try to recap on some of them very briefly. You are right to say that we made some advances in Germany, and I would like to give you a little bit of the background to that, which is that we started early, as the ambassador has said. So since the 2000s, the early 2000s, there were political initiatives taken in Germany on a large scale to invest into renewable energies. And we have seen, as we have heard now, the result of that with the very significant energy consumption coming from renewable sources. This has required a very significant investment effort, and it will require a similar investment effort also at a European level and in other countries if you were to replicate this. With regard to the question how we can bring industry along, and you've referred to the automobile industry in Germany, I think it is fair to say that it will be a very significant shift to bring this to a climate neutral energy, to make it a carbon-free energy industry. And there are a number of initiatives that the German government has taken in order to support that shift. One of them is, first of all, to incentivize this by tax measures. Another one is to offer benefits to the consumer for the purchase of electrical cars. Then there is also the very significant R&D investment in the hydrogen technology. And lastly, in Germany also, there is an investment needed in strengthening of and broader rollout of the charge point network to make use of these cars. So it has to be a concerted effort with a number of aspects. This is the road that we have taken in Germany. It is an international challenge that we face. I think similar investment of a significant nature are required at a European level.
Thank you very much. We've had some questions in, and I'm going to, I hope you forgive me for putting my head down, just reading them here. There's a question for both Ambassador Potzel and Mr. Schrodi. And we know, I suppose, the background to this is the Just Transition Fund of, am I correct, Grace O'Sullivan, in saying the European level at 7.5 billion euro. Ireland already has an allocation of about 30 million. I hope I'm correct in saying that, Deputy Bruton. But there's a question here from Jerry McAvilly from Friends of the Earth. Do Ambassador Potzel and Mr. Schrodi have views on ensuring a just transition for relevant industries and communities? For example, in terms of Germany's exit from coal, that was just mentioned already, and also on how Germany has made progress on the Sustainable Development Goals. So perhaps we will take that question about ensuring a just transition. Ambassador.
Mr. Schrodi, do you want to go first? Okay, lovely. Right. Well, yeah, I know that this is a very crucial topic here in Ireland as well, and I again, I mean, basically also referring to what Mr. Schrodi was describing. I mean, governments have to set a framework that kind of brings people, as Grace said, to buy into it, you know, and we have to be very careful not to kind of, or to accommodate people's worries and anxieties, because this is what we are really talking about, and to find ways to provide, you know, you were mentioning the phase out of the coal, you know, to retrain people, to give them the opportunity to acquire new knowledge and capacities, and then to find a new place of work. I was just thinking last week here, I think it's the same with like the peat, the guys who work in the peat in the bogs area, and the government here has just launched also funding to accommodate some of those needs, and I think this is the way that we need to go, you know, to facilitate that also these people buy into it, and also find a way to go on in their life and find a different field. And I think there's ample opportunities, especially with renewable energies and with climate protection. And I think there is so ample opportunity to create new jobs in new fields that we need to talk about it, and we have to make people aware and reassure them that there is a space for them. And for not only people, but also the companies, obviously, business.
And briefly, Mr. Schrodi.
Und Herr Schrodi, ganz kurz.
Ja, wie Mr. Bruton vorher auch sagte, wir müssen die Menschen mitnehmen in diesen Wandel. Wenn wir es nicht schaffen, Arbeitsplätze neu zu schaffen, wenn wir es nicht schaffen, die Arbeitsplätze, die uns wegfallen, auch zu ersetzen, wenn wir es nicht schaffen, die Menschen, die jetzt dort arbeiten, wo unter Umständen Arbeitsplätze wegfallen, dann werden die Leute nicht mitgehen, und wir werden ein Problem haben von Populisten, gerade von der rechten Seite, die sagen, schaut her, dieser ganze Klimawandel, den es ja schon gar nicht gibt, und diese ganze Transformation brauchen wir eigentlich gar nicht, die gefährden eure Jobs. Also ist es nur gerecht und gut, dass wir diesen Wandel gerecht hinbekommen, dass wir investieren, auch in Fortbildung zum Beispiel der Arbeitnehmerinnen und Arbeitnehmer, aber dass wir auch die Chance auf neue Jobs schaffen. Wir machen das zum Beispiel in Deutschland, dass wir in den Gebieten, in denen Kohle gebaut wird, zum Beispiel versuchen, neue Schlüsselindustrien zu schaffen, zum Beispiel Batteriezellenproduktion in diese Gebiete zu bringen, dass dort neue Jobs entstehen. Und genauso muss das auch in anderen Ländern funktionieren. Letzter Satz, dass wir dazu gemeinsam Kredite aufnehmen als Europäische Union und das als Gelder weitergeben an die Länder der Europäischen Union, um genau diese Investitionen zu tätigen, das ist ein großer Schritt hin zu Solidarität.
So if I can pick up on something that Richard Bruton said earlier, I think it is crucial that we bring people along on this journey, on this transformation. And if we fail to do this, we will fail with this project. It is important that where we lose jobs on the one hand due to an exit from existing industries, we create jobs to replace them on the other hand, and that we create new opportunities. So that change to that extent has to be just, and it has to be right. Now, one way in which we can strategically guide the development in this manner is that we place the new industries. For example, we mentioned the new cell battery industries. First of all, research and development, but also then when it comes to production, that we bring them in a targeted manner into those areas which have been most significantly affected by job losses. This is one way which is at our disposal, and this has to be happening at a national level, but we also have to do this in a concerted manner in Europe. But if I can make a final comment that on this topic, it is that we will need to, when it comes to financing this transformation, we need to take out loans at a European level to finance this. It has to be financed upfront and in advance, and that's a very important aspect from my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Professor Fitzgerald, can I ask a very general question, which is, in your mind, do you think that the Commission in general, but also the Irish government can work fast enough to with a sense of urgency to make all this happen?
There's a sense of urgency. The problem is that a lot of the changes need investment, and investment takes time. For example, in the Irish case, to deal with transport, we need a much denser development and much more investment in public transport. That investment in public transport will only come on stream at the end of this decade. If we're to reach decarbonisation by 2050, we have to do it now. So you spend the money up front, and in a lot of the areas, the benefits take longer. And in terms of, say, the improvement in emissions from motor vehicles, the regulation which is coming into force this year, which is driving or has driven change, was announced quite a number of years ago. And motor vehicle manufacturers saw this coming and they reacted. So one of the problems is that moving Europe or moving the world onto a decarbonization path takes time. But if you don't begin now, it's not going to happen. So I think it's developing a sense of urgency about something where the primary benefits are going to happen somewhat later.
Richard Bruton, would you like to come in there?
Yeah, no, I agree absolutely with John. The issue we have, I suppose, is you look two ways at once. You want to bring people on board and get engaged and collaborative, and at the same time, there's this huge urgency about getting new infrastructures into place. We have had problems with the planning system that can be very, very slow, and so these ambitions run counter to the sense of having people engaging. So we've to find a way, in my view, that we can build quicker and have open community gain built into that process. Our planning process has not envisaged ever that people who are, I suppose, discommoded by new infrastructure get something back. That's only creeping into our thinking in respect of renewable energy. But if we want to make a change, we're going to have to do that. The other thing is obviously providing people with access to loans. Will that get people to make the changes in their homes that are necessary? That is, the jury, I think, is out on that. And I think, at some point, the talk of regulatory change that John is talking about the motor industry, you'll probably be talking about trying to find a regulatory framework that accelerates change in sectors, and that won't be popular. So I think we've tricked political decisions to navigate in driving this forward, and I haven't even mentioned agriculture, which has its own set of problems.
Indeed, and I would like to get through some of the questions. There's quite a few questions to get through, mindful of the time. Again, to you, Mr. Bruton, a quick question here from Marion O'Shea asking, should Ireland continue to allow development of new data centres given their huge power requirements?
Well, I think data centres are here to stay, and Europe is going to need them. Now, Ireland has been selected as the location often for climate reasons, but they are, as I understand it, in the ETS. So the emission trading system is designed to encourage the most efficient location in carbon terms of infrastructure that Europe needs. So, I think their location in Ireland, while they do mean we need to develop renewables to service them, they are being located under an ETS model designed to get the optimal European decision making. So as that moves to other sectors, as Fitzgerald has indicated, you may see locational preferences for certain countries, and data centers seems to be one that Ireland has a competitive advantage at the moment.
Grace O'Sullivan, can you talk briefly about, probably one of the most important things here is food policy and agricultural policy, and the alignment, whether it is important or not to align the common agricultural policy with the farm to fork strategy as outlined by from Europe, sort of the top-down approach. Can you talk a little bit about that in the context of what we're talking about here and the transition towards a green economy?
Yeah, Ella, it's first just 17.5 billion is the proposed Just Transition Fund, which hopefully will be agreed over the next few weeks. But with regard to Ireland and agriculture and how we're going to manage the transition, of course, it's really important for us, the Greens, that there is coherence in the policies that are coming from Ireland and also the policies in the EU that align with the European Green Deal. So there's no point in us coming up with anything less than ambitious from Ireland that won't bring us to the path of carbon neutrality by 2050. But the most important thing, just to go back into it, is if we don't get that financial support, and if we don't engage and with the key stakeholders, it won't happen. And the beauty from my perspective, being Irish and being a member of the Oireachtas over the past few years, was to see the Citizens' Assembly on Climate Change, which John Fitzgerald and many others were involved in, the committee on the Oireachtas Committee on Climate Change. So I believe that the information is flowing to all sectors and all people, and to the agri sector. And I believe that the farmers and the food producers, and I have to keep reminding myself every time when I'm speaking with farmers, that it's food production that is at stake here. It's giving us that quality food, and it's producing and building resilience. And we're not seeing that at the moment. We just heard this morning on the news that Ireland is importing vast quantities of spuds of potatoes. I mean, why, so why aren't we doing this ourselves? And doing it in a way that's supporting farm income, supporting the retailer, supporting the consumer in good locally produced produce. But we need more from the government. We need more government support in that area. And we're seeing it. I do believe we are seeing it, but it will, I accept it will take time, but the momentum, and I agree with John Fitzgerald, the momentum, we need to keep that speed up, because otherwise it won't happen fast enough.
Professor Fitzgerald.
Agriculture needs to change, and compared to, say, the coal industry, which has got to go out of business, agriculture, fortunately, there are solutions. Agriculture, farmers can change a lot of what they're doing and make more money. So it isn't necessarily a case you're going to put people out of business. The problem, though, is a lot of farmers are like me, aged over 70. And getting farmers, or getting me to change my ways, is difficult. And getting the farming community to change what they're doing is difficult. So it is, yes, there's an issue of just transition in agriculture, but it is encouraging farmers and persuading farmers that there are different ways of doing things which will suck carbon out of the atmosphere and produce less methane and make them better off and more sustainable. I think actually Brexit is going to, because the beef industry in Ireland is going to be exceptionally badly hit by it, and it is going to provoke a crisis where I think finding alternative ways of a more secure income, so I could see changes there coming. But it's something which is a question of persuasion and talking. And one of the things I've learned is when you're an elderly gentleman coming down from Dublin and telling farmers what to do, you're onto a loser. It is the farming community itself learning and talking to themselves. So I think there is an opportunity to change. I think it is happening more rapidly. That is, with the help of the farming community, that will happen.
And Ambassador Potzel, you did speak briefly of sustainable agriculture. We know that none of this transition to a green economy will happen successfully without addressing food and farm policy. Can you briefly just expand a little bit on your own vision in terms of sustainable agriculture and where you think Ireland should go, and Germany as well?
Well, let me first of all say that the common agricultural policy is always a very hardly fought issue on the European arena, because I feel that it is so instrumental for most countries, and not so much in terms of output or importance for the gross national product, but it is very often a very emotional topic in a lot of countries. So change is I think rather difficult to achieve, but it is absolutely necessary, and we want to go there. And I really can just echo what Professor John Fitzgerald said. I mean, you need people to buy in. You need financial support. You need to, and governments need to create incentives and also legal frameworks for people to have an educated choice and also go the right way. So that, I think, is absolutely important. But if I may just pick up on what Professor Fitzgerald just said about an elderly man going to the farmers somewhere out from Dublin, going to the farmers somewhere outside of Dublin. I think what is really important is to educate the kids, the children in schools, to make them aware of what's going on. And there is a lot of openness. I mean, you know, Friday for Future is a very good example, but it doesn't have to be like this. But it's you know, if you teach kids in schools about the importance of protecting the environment, and they will take it home, even, you know, somewhere in a remote area in Ireland, then it doesn't have to be the elderly guy from Dublin telling people, but it will kind of also, you know, the kids will bring it to the table and talk to their parents about it. And I think we really need to bring in the young generation even more on this. But coming back to your original question, really, I mean, it is a very difficult subject in a lot of countries. But as I said, the combination of government incentivizing change, supporting change, providing financial means, and providing education is, I think, a very good way that we just need to follow.
Michael Schrodi, finally, can I ask you to expand a little bit, because we may not have heard all of it. Your emphasis of the need to strengthen the EU in reaction to the challenges posed by, obviously, the climate crisis and the biodiversity crisis, but also the pandemic. Can you briefly expand on that and just reiterate what you said in your talk at the beginning?
Thank you. Ja, ich glaube, dass diese Corona-Krise schon gezeigt hat, dass wir enger zusammenarbeiten müssen. Wir sind in einer Konkurrenz mit den Vereinigten Staaten, mit China, und allein das macht schon eine Zusammenarbeit notwendig. Aber wir haben auch gesehen, wie abhängig wir sind von manchen Lieferketten, wenn man zum Beispiel über die Masken nachdenkt, die auf einmal ausgegangen sind, weil die Lieferkette von China nach Europa auf einmal nicht mehr funktioniert hat. Also die Frage ist, wie können wir auch wichtige Schlüsselindustrien nicht nur halten, sondern auch hier ausbauen, und das in Europa gemeinsam. Das ist ein Punkt. Wenn wir auch darüber sprechen, wie wir zum Beispiel in Zukunft im Gesundheitswesen zusammenarbeiten. Wir sehen jetzt zum Beispiel, wie notwendig es ist, zusammen mit großen, auch finanziellem Aufwand auch der Staaten einen Impfstoff zu finden. Auch da, glaube ich, gehört es dazu, in Zukunft als Europa gemeinsame Lösungen zu finden und gemeinsame Forschung und Entwicklung in neue Universitäten, auch dort auch Leuchtturmprojekte darin zu investieren. Und eine Sache noch, auf die ich eingehen will, bei Mr. Bruton, der gesagt hat, die Digitalisierung, die ja mitten im Gange ist, die auch Irland gerade, ich habe es gesehen in Dublin, in den Docklands und was dort entstanden ist die letzten 15 Jahre, wie die Digitalisierung die Arbeitswelt verändert, aber natürlich auch viel Energie braucht. Überall werden wir auch die Abhängigkeit, die wir gerade haben bei der Digitalisierung, versuchen, mit europäischen Antworten ein Stück weit Souveränität wieder mehr zu bekommen. Weniger Abhängigkeit von den großen Anbietern bei der Digitalisierung, von den großen US-amerikanischen Unternehmen. Und auch da, um mehr digitale Souveränität zu haben, brauchen wir gemeinsame Anstrengungen, weil das ist die Zukunft. Digitalisierung überall in der Landwirtschaft, auch beispielsweise. Also das sind die 3 Punkte, an denen wir zeigen können, dass wir eine engere und vermehrte Zusammenarbeit in Europa brauchen, wo sie auch sinnvoll ist.
If the coronavirus has shown us one thing, it is how important it is to work together and to work very closely. And we have seen also through this corona crisis the situation of our competition with the United States on the one hand and China on the other hand come very much to the fore and into the focus. We've seen this with the impact of supply chain issues that arose from supports from China that weren't, or goods from China that didn't reach Europe. And I think in response to this lecture that we this lesson that we should learn, it is important for us to expand the key industries within Europe. That's very important. It's one important aspect. Another aspect at a European level, I think, where we need and can cooperate is the health sector. We have seen in the development of the vaccines in response to the crisis how important it is to have the financial wherewithal to respond to the R&D demands, and these are demands that could be met in Europe and should be met in Europe, and for that we need a European funding mechanism to support this development. And the final point, I think, if I can pick up on something that Bruton said here, Richard Bruton said here, is with regard to the digitalization. This, and we've heard, that it is on the one hand a key part of any economy in the future. However, it does have very significant energy demands. So we've seen on the one hand the developments in the docklands in Dublin over the last 15 years, and we see how that has an impact on our work practices, but on the other hand it really makes a huge demand on our energy sources. And this is something where, again, from a European perspective, we should work together very closely so that we become independent of the big American players in the digitalization market. And digitalization, we should never forget, is key to the future, and it's key to the future across all industries, and that includes even the farming sector. So these are, this is perhaps the last aspect where we at a European level should work together in order to find our own sovereignty, our own independence again from the other global players. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very, very briefly, Richard Bruton, if I could just ask you finally to put this in a broader context in terms of globally. I mean, obviously, we know we have the rejuvenation of multilateral relations with the new incoming President Biden in America. So presumably, one can imagine that this momentum for the green economy is only going to gather quite considerable speed in the next 6 months.
You would hope so, certainly. I suppose the US obviously will have its own domestic problems in delivering its commitments to the Paris Agreement. So come on board is the first step, and I think it will create momentum, hopefully, for other countries who seem to be, I suppose, deviating from commitment to the Paris Agreement. I think the change in the US will, I think, cause some of the countries to pause. And I think there is some encouraging signs that countries who haven't been involved are coming on board. So I hopefully this will build momentum, but I'd still go back to the underlying challenges, finding ways in which we bring our communities with us. There's no doubt that you see a substantial vote for those who would be resisting climate progress in all of our communities. And so we do have to come up with a vision that can be all embracing. And I think that is one of the challenges we haven't given enough attention to. We talk a lot about targets, which are really important because the science dictates them. But delivering targets requires we bring communities and governments can win elections who are making this change. And that is a really challenging arena that we have to work on collectively to deliver. But I think there is a greater optimism that we can do that now.
And Ambassador Potzel, the final word for you, please, just on that very important point, which is to ensure that the citizens of Europe are brought along. And as Mr. Bruton says, that they are also voting in governments who can deliver on this promise and this necessity for this transition towards a green economy.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is like the most important thing, as we said numerous times during this talk today, to bring people on board, to make people aware of what's going on and how important this whole issue is. We need a European, but also an international effort. I mean, there are still far too many people who actually question the climate change as such, or the effects of climate change, so climate change deniers. So we need to have that conversation, and again, we also need to create the framework. Governments need to create, the EU needs to create the framework for those initiatives, but also for businesses to thrive and to implement those initiatives and policies. If I may just give like one very practical example of how this could work, there are a couple of what we call energy twinnings between towns in Germany and towns in other European countries, among them also Ireland. And this is just a wonderful, very practical, down-to-earth model of how exchange can work and how people learn from each other. We just recently also had a really nice seminar with the Chamber of Commerce on microgrids between German and Irish companies, and a few contracts were signed after that. So, and I know that also the energy twinnings that I mentioned, that they are talking microgrids. They learn from each other and they implement those strategies. So, there are very practical things that we all can do and promote and strengthen. And then there are obviously the big questions that need to be solved elsewhere. But to make people aware of those opportunities and possibilities, I think is crucial. And that's why I also hope that we can spread the word even more and make it a topic that is much more on the agenda than it has been so far.
Thank you so much. And it's a good positive note to end this session on. Long may the good relations between Ireland and Germany last. Thank you so much, Ambassador Deike Potzel, Grace O'Sullivan, Richard Bruton, Michael Schrodi, John Fitzgerald, and also Martin Boyster as well. We're very grateful to you, and I know that this video will be up on YouTube for people to watch back again and to spread the word. But thank you so much indeed for your time this morning.